Her small body trembled as she grabbed his tattooed arm. Paint smeared her tear-streaked face, her braids swinging wildly as she gasped for breath. "Someone's hurting my mom," she choked out, her voice shattering through the golden hall. Every conversation stopped. Wine glasses froze midair. 100 dangerous men turned to stare. But the man this terrified child had chosen to beg wasn't just anyone. He was the most feared mafia boss in 3 states, a man who had built his empire on violence and buried his heart in ice. And what he did next would shock every witness in that room. Stay with me because this story will leave you breathless. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's dive in. Her small body trembled as she grabbed his tattooed arm. Paint smeared her tear-streaked face, her braids swinging wildly as she gasped for breath. "Someone's hurting my mom," she choked out, her voice shattering through the golden hall. Every conversation stopped. Wine glasses froze midair. 100 dangerous men turned to stare. But the man this terrified child had chosen to beg wasn't just anyone. He was the most feared mafia boss in 3 states, a man who had built his empire on violence and buried his heart in ice. And what he did next would shock every witness in that room. Stay with me because this story will leave you breathless. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's dive in. It's a cold Friday night in downtown Manhattan, December 2024. The Grand Monarch Hotel glows like a fortress of gold against the dark city skyline. Inside its marble-floored ballroom, the city's most powerful criminal families have gathered for their quarterly summit. This isn't a place for tourists or celebrities. This is where empires are divided, where fortunes change hands with a handshake, where one wrong word can end a life. The air hums with expensive cologne, cigar smoke, and hushed negotiations. Waiters glide between tables draped in golden cloth, serving wine that costs more than most people's rent. Security stands stone-faced at every exit. Everyone here understands the rules. You keep your voice low, you show respect, and you never, ever cause a scene. At the center of it all sits the mafia boss. At 35, he is already a legend whispered about in 3 states. Muscular and light-skinned, his body is a canvas of tattoos, intricate designs crawling up his neck, across his hands, even marking his face. Tonight he wears a glittering black suit that catches every flicker of chandelier light, making him look almost otherworldly. His expression is carved from stone. His presence commands silence without him speaking a single word. He built his power on strict rules and ruthless efficiency. Sentiment is weakness. Mercy is death. Trust no one who hasn't bled for you. For over a decade, these principles kept him alive and on top in a world where most men don't make it past 30. Tonight is business as usual. Territory negotiations, profit reports, political bribes being calculated down to the dollar. The mafia boss listens with cold precision, his dark eyes missing nothing, his mind 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the room. His lieutenants speak in careful tones. They know better than to waste his time with emotional appeals or excuses. He respects only results and loyalty. Everything else is expendable. But then something happens that shatters the careful order of the evening like a gunshot through glass. The ballroom's massive oak doors explode inward with such force, they slam against marble walls. Every head snaps toward the sound. Conversations die mid-sentence. The string quartet falters, their music trailing off into shocked silence. Standing in the doorway is a little girl. She can't be more than 7 years old. Her red dress, once beautiful, is now dirty and torn at the hem. Her face is streaked with tears and smeared with pink paint that looks almost garish under the chandeliers. Her braids are half undone, swinging around her face as she sways on her feet, clearly exhausted. She looks like she's run through hell itself to get here. The hotel's maitre d' rushes forward, panic written across his face. Miss, you can't be. But the little girl doesn't hear him. Her wide brown eyes sweep across the sea of dangerous faces, searching desperately for something. Most of the men look away, uncomfortable or annoyed. Others whisper to each other, irritated that their evening has been disrupted by what they assume is some lost child who wandered in from the street. But this little girl isn't lost, and she isn't looking for directions. She's looking for power, for salvation, for someone strong enough to do what needs to be done. Her gaze lands on the Mafia boss's table at the center of the room, and something shifts in her expression. Maybe it's the way every other man in the room defers to him with their body language. Maybe it's the glittering suit that marks him as someone important. Maybe it's the commanding stillness he radiates even while seated. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something deeper. A child's instinct recognizing the one person in this room of wolves who actually has the power to help her. Without a moment's hesitation, Sophia runs. She weaves between tables, her small feet barely making a sound on the marble floor. The room collectively holds its breath. This is unprecedented, unthinkable. No one approaches the Mafia boss uninvited, certainly not like this. His bodyguards tense immediately, hands moving toward their jackets. They exchange quick glances, uncertain how to handle a child who clearly poses no physical threat, but is violating every protocol they've been trained to enforce. Before anyone can intercept her, Sophia reaches his table. She throws herself at him, her small hands grabbing the sleeve of his glittering jacket with desperate strength. Her fingers clutch the expensive fabric like it's the only thing keeping her from drowning. And then she speaks the words that will echo through his mind for the rest of his life. Please, someone's hurting my mom. She's dying. The silence that follows is absolute. No clink of glasses, no rustle of fabric, no whispered conversations. Even the bodyguards freeze mid-motion. Every eye in the Grand Monarch Ballroom turns to the Mafia boss, waiting to see how the most feared man in the Northeast will handle this impossible situation. His reputation has been built on being untouchable, unfeeling, unmoved by any plea for mercy. He sent fathers to prison while their children wept. He's ordered executions while victims begged for their lives. He's foreclosed on family businesses without blinking. The Mafia boss looks down at the trembling child clinging to his arm. Her face is tilted up toward his, those brown eyes swimming with tears and desperate hope. In that moment, staring into the innocent terror of this little girl, something cracks in the fortress he's built around his heart. Something he hasn't felt in 15 years. You see, the Mafia boss hadn't always been this cold, calculating predator that Manhattan's underworld feared. I don't remember breathing in those first few seconds. Everything felt frozen, like the whole world was holding its breath with me. Then the Mafia boss moved. He pushed his chair back slowly. The sound of wood scraping against marble echoed through the silent ballroom. And then he did something I'll never forget, for as long as I live. He knelt down. This giant, terrifying man, covered in tattoos, wearing a suit that sparkled like stars, lowered himself until his eyes were level with mine. Up close, he was even more frightening than I'd thought. The tattoos on his face weren't just drawings, they were stories written in ink, symbols I didn't understand but somehow knew meant danger. His cologne was strong, expensive, nothing like the cheap body spray the men in my neighborhood wore. It smelled like leather and smoke and something else I couldn't name, something that made me think of power. I should have run. Every instinct in my 7-year-old body screamed that this man was dangerous, that I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should let go of his sleeve and run back out into the night. But I didn't let go. I couldn't. Because behind all those tattoos, behind the cold expression and the expensive suit, I saw something in his eyes. Something that looked almost like pain. What's your name? His voice was deep, rough, but quieter than I expected. Sophia. I whispered, my voice cracking. He nodded slowly, like my name was important information he needed to file away. Sophia, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Can you do that? I tried to speak, but the words got stuck in my throat. All I could see was my mama's face. All I could hear was her screaming. The mafia boss must have seen something shift in my expression because his hand, massive and covered in silver rings, reached up and gently touched my shoulder. Not grabbing, not threatening, just there. Take your time, he said softly. So I told him. The words tumbled out between sobs, broken and messy, but I told him everything. I told him how I'd been in my room doing face painting. That's why I had all this pink stuff on my cheeks. Mama had bought me a kit from the dollar store, and I was practicing being a butterfly. We were supposed to go to the park tomorrow. Mama promised we'd feed the pigeons. Then I heard the banging on our apartment door, loud, aggressive, the kind of banging that makes your stomach drop because you know whoever's on the other side isn't going to be nice. I heard Mama rush to the door, heard her voice, high and scared. Please, I just need more time. I'm working double shifts, I swear I'll have it by next week. But they didn't care. The Iron Vipers, I whispered to the Mafia boss, my hand still clutching his sleeve. That's what they kept saying. Iron Vipers don't give extensions. Iron Vipers don't show mercy. The Mafia boss's jaw tightened. I saw something flash in his eyes. Recognition, anger, something dangerous that made the air around us feel electric. How many? He asked. 3. 3 men. I was shaking now, the memories flooding back. They pushed the door open so hard it hit Mama in the face. I saw blood on her lip. I told him how I'd hidden behind the cupboard in the kitchen, my hand pressed over my mouth to keep from screaming. How I'd peeked through the crack and watched them circle my mother like wolves. One of them grabbed her by her hair, her beautiful braids that she'd just gotten done last week, and yanked her head back. "Where's the money, Miriam?" he'd snarled. "I don't have it," Mama cried. "Please, I have a daughter." That's when they started breaking things. Glass shattered. Our tiny kitchen table flipped over. Plates Mama had saved up to buy smashed against the walls. And through it all, Mama kept screaming, kept begging them to stop, kept saying my name. "Sophia, stay hidden, don't come out." But I couldn't just hide. I couldn't just let them hurt her. So when one of them went into the bathroom, when their backs were turned for just a second, I ran. I squeezed past them, flew out the door, and ran down the stairs so fast I thought my heart would explode. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed help. Real help. Not the police. Mama always said the police never came fast enough to our neighborhood. Not the neighbors. They were too scared of the Iron Vipers to do anything. I needed someone powerful, someone scary enough that even the bad guys would be afraid. And then I saw the Golden Hotel glowing in the distance, and something told me that's where I needed to go. By the time I finished talking, I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. The whole story had poured out of me, and now I felt empty and terrified and so tired. The Mafia boss's hand was still on my shoulder, steady and warm. Then, without a word, he lifted me up into his arms. I gasped, startled, but he held me carefully, like I was made of glass. He stood up, carrying me like I weighed nothing, and I found myself pressed against his chest, my face buried in that glittering jacket. Around us, I heard whispers, shocked murmurs from all the dangerous men at the tables. "Is he really? I can't believe. Vincent never—" But the Mafia boss didn't seem to hear them. Or maybe he just didn't care. He adjusted me in his arms, and I felt one of his hands cradle the back of my head, almost protective. His voice, when he spoke, was so quiet only I could hear it. "Show me where she is, Sophia." Those 7 words changed everything. I lifted my tear-stained face and looked at him through blurry eyes. You'll help my mama?" Something softened in his expression. Not much. He was still terrifying, still dangerous, but enough that I knew he meant what he said next. No one hurts your mother and walks away. I promise you that. I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. She's at the Riverside Apartments, I whispered, my small hand gripping his collar. Building C, third floor, apartment 304. The Mafia boss turned to his men, still holding me against his chest. His voice, when he addressed them, was completely different. Hard, commanding, lethal. Carlo, bring the car around. Marcus, call Doc Rossi and tell him to meet us at the private clinic. Everyone else, you're with me. We're going to Riverside. Then he looked down at me one more time, and his voice dropped back to that quiet, almost gentle tone. Hold on tight, Sophia. We're going to get your mama. And for the first time since I'd burst through those doors, I felt something other than terror. I felt hope. The Mafia boss carried me through the golden ballroom, past all those staring faces, past the bodyguards who scrambled to follow, past the maitre d' who looked like he might faint. I kept my face pressed against his chest, too scared to look at anyone, too worried about Mama to care what anyone thought. The cold night air hit me like a slap when we stepped outside. I shivered, and the Mafia boss's arms tightened around me slightly, like he noticed. "Boss, the car's here," someone called out. I lifted my head and saw the biggest, blackest car I'd ever seen in my life. It looked like something from a movie, sleek and shiny, with windows so dark you couldn't see inside. A man in a suit held the door open, and the Mafia boss carried me straight to it. He slid into the back seat with me still in his arms, then carefully set me down on the leather seat beside him. I'd never felt anything like that leather. It was soft, buttery smooth, and the seats were so big that my feet dangled above the floor, not even close to touching. The whole inside of the car smelled like expensive things. New leather, cologne, and something else that reminded me of the fancy candle store Mama and I walked past sometimes, but could never afford to go into. There were lights in the ceiling that glowed soft blue. The doors shut with a heavy, solid sound that made me feel like we were in a tank instead of a car. Men piled into the seats around us, 3 more in the back row behind us, 2 in the front. The driver started the engine, and it rumbled to life with a power I could feel in my bones. "Riverside Apartments, Building C," the Mafia boss said. His voice was sharp now, all business. "Fast, but don't attract attention. No sirens. No scenes until we know what we're walking into." "Yes, boss," the driver said, and we pulled away from the hotel. The Mafia boss's hand found mine in the darkness. His massive palm swallowed my small hand completely, but his grip was gentle. He didn't say anything, just held on, and somehow that made me feel a little less scared. The men started talking in low, hard voices that sounded like gravel scraping against metal. "Iron vipers in our territory?" one of them growled from the back seat. "That's a declaration of war." "They've been getting bold," another voice added. "Testing boundaries, seeing what they can get away with." "They're about to find out," the Mafia boss said quietly, and something in his tone made everyone go silent for a moment. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. The fancy part of Manhattan with its bright lights and clean streets gave way to neighborhoods that looked more like mine. Buildings with chipped paint, streets with potholes, fewer people walking around after dark. Every second felt like an hour. Every red light made me want to scream. "Can't we go faster?" I whispered, my voice so small I wasn't sure anyone heard me. But the Mafia boss did. He squeezed my hand. "We're going as fast as we can without drawing police attention. Trust me, Sophia. We'll get there." Trust him. 2 days ago, I didn't even know this man existed. Now I was trusting him with the most important thing in my world, my mama's life. The guilt hit me then, like a wave crashing over my head. I'd left her. I'd run away while those men were hurting her. What kind of daughter does that? What if she needed me? What if she called for me and I wasn't there? What if these men got to her too late because I'd wasted time running all the way to that hotel? It's my fault, I choked out, tears streaming down my face again. I left her. I ran away like a coward. The mafia boss turned to look at me, and his free hand came up to tilt my chin so I had to meet his eyes. Listen to me, Sophia. His voice was firm but not unkind. You did exactly what your mother wanted you to do. You survived, and you were smart enough to find help. That's not cowardice, that's courage. But what if— No what ifs, he cut me off gently. We focus on what we can control right now. And right now, we're going to get your mother. Understand? I nodded, even though the guilt still sat heavy in my chest like a stone. The car turned onto a street I recognized, and my heart started pounding even harder. We were getting close. So close. That's it, I said, pointing through the window at the familiar rundown building. Building C, the one with the broken light outside. The riverside apartments looked even more depressing than usual in the darkness. Graffiti covered the ground floor walls. Half the windows had bars on them. The whole place sagged like it was tired of standing up. This was my home, and seeing it next to these men in their expensive suits, in their expensive car, made me feel something hot and shameful in my stomach. But if the mafia boss or his men judged the building, they didn't show it. They were all business, their faces hard and focused. The car stopped, and immediately the men started moving. Doors opened. People got out with smooth, practiced efficiency. The mafia boss scooped me back up into his arms without a word. I wrapped my arms around his neck and held on tight. Marcus, Doc Rossi's ETA? He asked. 5 minutes out, boss, one of the men replied. Good. Carlo, Angelo, you're with me. The rest of you secure the perimeter. I don't want any iron vipers slipping away if they're still up there. Yes, boss. We moved toward the building entrance, the broken door that never locked properly, that Mama was always complaining the landlord wouldn't fix. The mafia boss pushed through it like it offended him personally. Inside, the stairwell smelled like it always did. Old cooking, mildew, and something sour I never wanted to identify. One of the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like an angry insect. The mafia boss's footsteps were heavy on the stairs as he carried me up. I could feel his heart beating against my cheek, steady, strong, not even fast. Like climbing 3 flights of stairs while carrying a child was nothing to him. But with each step higher, my own heart beat faster. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. The hallway stretched ahead of us, doors on either side. Some had music playing behind them. One had voices arguing. Most were silent. Apartment 304 was at the end of the hall. The door was wide open. I felt the mafia boss's entire body tense when he saw it. His arms tightened around me protectively. Stay close, he murmured to his men. As we got closer, I could see the damage. The door frame was splintered where they'd forced it open. The hinges hung at a wrong angle, and from inside, I could hear nothing. No voices, no movement, just terrible, awful silence. Mama? I whispered, my voice breaking. The mafia boss stepped through the doorway, and the sight that greeted us made my whole world shatter into pieces. Our apartment looked like a tornado had torn through it. The little kitchen table where Mama and I ate breakfast every morning, overturned, one leg snapped clean off. The chairs we'd found at a thrift store, scattered across the floor like broken toys. Our plates, the ones with the little yellow flowers that Mama loved because they reminded her of spring, shattered into 1,000 pieces, glittering like deadly snow across the linoleum. Glass crunched under the mafia boss's shoes as he stepped inside. Glass from our cups, from the picture frames, from the window someone had smashed. But it was the blood that made me stop breathing. Smeared on the wall near the kitchen, splattered on the floor. Droplets leading toward the tiny living room like a horrible trail. Mama? My voice came out strangled, barely a whisper. The mafia boss moved deeper into the apartment, his men fanning out behind him, checking rooms with quick efficiency. But I wasn't paying attention to them anymore, because I saw her. Mama was lying on the floor near the couch, her body crumpled like a discarded doll. Her beautiful braids, the ones she'd spent hours getting done, the ones she'd been so proud of, were tangled and matted with blood. Her work uniform, the blue one she wore to her nursing assistant job at the clinic, was torn and stained dark. She wasn't moving. "Mama!" The scream ripped out of me so hard it hurt my throat. I thrashed in the mafia boss's arms, desperate to get to her, needing to reach her, needing her to wake up and tell me everything was okay. The mafia boss set me down and I ran. I dropped to my knees beside her, my small hands grabbing at her arms, her shoulders, her face. Her skin was warm. She was still warm. That meant something. That meant she was still alive, right? "Mama, wake up! Please wake up!" Tears poured down my face, mixing with the pink paint still smeared on my cheeks. "I got help! I found someone to help! You have to wake up now!" But she didn't move. Her eyes stayed closed. Her chest barely rose and fell with shallow breaths. There was a cut above her eyebrow, still bleeding. Her lip was split and swollen. Bruises were already forming on her arms, her neck, her face. Purple and blue marks in the shape of fingers. They'd hurt her so bad. "Boss," one of the men's voices cut through my sobs. "They're gone. Looks like they cleared out maybe 10-15 minutes ago." The mafia boss was already kneeling beside us, his phone pressed to his ear. "Rossi, forget the clinic. I need you at Riverside Apartments, Building C, Apartment 304, now." His voice had an edge to it I hadn't heard before, sharp, urgent, almost frantic. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. "Female, early 30s, multiple contusions, possible head trauma, unconscious, but breathing." He paused, his free hand hovering over Mama like he wanted to touch her, but wasn't sure if he should. "No, we're not waiting. I'm bringing her to you. Have everything ready." He hung up and looked at me. "Sophia, I need to pick up your mother. Can you step back for just a moment?" "No!" I grabbed Mama's hand tighter. "I'm not leaving her again." Something flickered across his face. Understanding, maybe. He didn't argue. Instead, he carefully, so carefully, slid his arms under Mama's body. One arm beneath her knees, one behind her shoulders. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest with the same gentleness he'd shown me. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and I saw more blood matted in her hair. A sob caught in my throat. "Let's go," the mafia boss said to his men. "Carlo, you drive. I need both hands free." We moved fast. Down the stairs, out to the car, the mafia boss barking orders the whole way. Someone held the car door open. Someone else was on the phone, talking quickly about the target's location and finding the iron vipers. But I only had eyes for Mama. The mafia boss slid into the back seat with her still in his arms, and I scrambled in after them. He positioned Mama so her upper body was resting against him, her head on his shoulder, and then he guided me to sit right next to them. I pressed myself against Mama's side, my small hands gripping her arm, my face buried against her shoulder. "Mama, please," I sobbed. "Please don't leave me. Please wake up. I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I left you. Please just wake up." The car jerked into motion, moving faster than before. Someone must have told the driver it didn't matter about attracting attention anymore. "How far?" the mafia boss demanded. 4 minutes, Carlo called back. 4 minutes, 240 seconds. Each one felt like forever. I kept talking to Mama, begging her to hear me, telling her I loved her, promising I'd be good forever if she just woke up. The mafia boss's hand rested on Mama's forehead, checking something, temperature maybe, or just making sure she was still breathing. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see a muscle jumping in his cheek. His eyes were dark and stormy in a way that would have scared me if they'd been pointed at me. But they weren't. They were fixed on my mother with an intensity that felt almost protective. The car screeched to a stop outside a building I didn't recognize, not a regular hospital, something smaller, more private. Before we'd even fully stopped, people in white coats were rushing toward us. "Let's go." The Mafia boss was out of the car in seconds, Mama still in his arms. I scrambled after him, nearly falling, but someone caught me, one of his men, lifting me up so I could keep pace. The doors burst open. We entered a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and fear. "Exam room 2, it's prepped and ready," a woman in scrubs called out, running alongside us. "Vitals?" A man with gray hair and glasses, the doctor, I realized, appeared, his hands already reaching for Mama. "Thready pulse, shallow respirations, unresponsive to stimuli," the Mafia boss reported, his voice clipped and professional. They swept into a room with bright lights that hurt my eyes. The Mafia boss laid Mama down on a table with surprising gentleness, then stepped back as nurses and doctors swarmed around her. I tried to push forward, but someone held me back. "Sophia, let them work," the Mafia boss said quietly. "No, I need to be with her." "You are with her, but right now the doctors need space to help her, understand?" I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I just wanted my mama to open her eyes and smile at me and tell me this was all a bad dream. But the Mafia boss was guiding me backward, out into the hallway, even as I tried to resist. Through the open door, I could see them cutting away Mama's uniform, hooking up wires and tubes, shining lights in her eyes, moving with urgent efficiency. The door swung shut, and suddenly, everything was quiet, except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. I stood in that hallway, my legs shaking, my whole body trembling. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A clock on the wall ticked loudly. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. My knees gave out. I hit the floor hard, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything except the crushing weight of terror pressing down on my chest. What if Mama didn't wake up? What if I'd been too late? What if those men had hurt her so bad that even doctors couldn't fix her? I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face in them, sobbing so hard my whole body shook. Then I felt someone kneel beside me. The Mafia boss lowered himself to the floor, this powerful, dangerous man in his expensive, glittering suit, and knelt right there on the hospital linoleum next to me. He didn't say anything at first, just stayed there, solid and present. Finally, his voice cut through my sobs, quiet but firm. "Sophia, look at me." I lifted my tear-stained face. His dark eyes held mine, and what I saw there wasn't pity. It was something stronger, something that felt like a promise carved in stone. "I won't leave you," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever. Do you understand me? Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." And somehow, in that moment, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the sound of medical equipment beeping beyond closed doors, I believed him. The doctor said Mama was stable but critical, which I didn't really understand, except that it meant she was still alive. They moved her to a private room, a quiet space with machines that beeped softly and monitors that showed wavy green lines I couldn't read. I sat in a chair they'd pulled up beside her bed, holding her hand. Her fingers were limp in mine, not squeezing back like they usually did. An IV drip fed clear liquid into her arm. White bandages covered the worst of her injuries. She looked so small in that hospital bed. Mama was always the strong one, the one who worked double shifts and still had energy to help me with homework. The one who carried groceries up 3 flights of stairs without complaining. The one who made everything feel safe. Now she looked fragile, like she might break if I held her hand too tight. The Mafia boss had stepped out into the hallway maybe 20 minutes ago. Through the small window in the door, I could see him pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from here, I could tell something was different about him. His whole body was tense, coiled like a spring wound too tight. His free hand kept clenching and unclenching into a fist, and the tattoos on his neck, I swear they looked darker somehow, like they were moving under his skin, pulsing with something angry and alive. I couldn't hear his words clearly, but his voice carried through the door in low, dangerous rumbles that made the hair on my arms stand up. A nurse walked past him in the hallway and quickly changed direction, choosing a different corridor. Even she could feel whatever energy was radiating off him. I watched as he stopped pacing, his whole body going still in a way that was somehow more frightening than the movement. His jaw clenched. His eyes, those dark, intense eyes, narrowed to slits. Then he spoke, and even though his voice dropped to barely above a whisper, I heard 3 words clearly. Bring them in. The way he said it made my stomach flip. There was something in those words that sounded final, permanent, like a door slamming shut that would never open again. He listened to whoever was on the other end for a moment. Then, I don't care what it takes. I want every single one of them. And I want them alive. For now. That last part, for now, sent a chill down my spine even though I didn't fully understand why. The Mafia boss ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at his phone like it had personally offended him. Then he looked down at his hands, those big, powerful hands covered in rings and tattoos, and I saw them trembling slightly. Not from fear, from rage. When he finally came back into the room, his expression had smoothed out a little, like he'd put a mask back on. But I could still see it underneath. The anger, the violence, the promise of something terrible waiting to happen. Any change? He asked quietly, looking at Mama. I shook my head, tears welling up again. She still won't wake up. He pulled up another chair and sat down heavily, like he was suddenly exhausted. For a long moment, he just stared at Mama's face, and I saw something flicker across his expression, something that looked almost like guilt. Your mother didn't deserve this, he said finally. No one deserves this. Are you gonna find them? I asked, my voice small. The men who hurt her? His eyes met mine, and what I saw there made me shrink back a little. Not because I was scared of him, I wasn't any more somehow, but because I'd never seen that much cold fury in a person's face before. Yes, he said simply. I'm going to find them. And then what? He paused, choosing his words carefully. And then they'll answer for what they've done. I didn't know exactly what that meant. My 7-year-old brain couldn't quite grasp the full weight of what he was promising. But some instinct deep inside me understood that whatever was going to happen to those men, it wouldn't be good. And I didn't feel bad about it. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe little girls aren't supposed to want revenge. But when I looked at my mama lying there, broken and unconscious because of what they'd done, I couldn't find it in my heart to care what happened to them. Good, I whispered. The Mafia boss nodded slowly, like I'd just passed some kind of test. Hours passed. I must have fallen asleep at some point, my head resting on Mama's bed, still holding her hand. When I woke up, the room was darker, someone had dimmed the lights, and there was a blanket draped over my shoulders. The Mafia boss was gone. Panic seized my chest. He'd promised he wouldn't leave, he'd said, but then the door opened, and he stepped back inside. Except he looked different now. His glittering black suit jacket was gone, and his white shirt was dirty, streaked with dust and something dark I tried not to think too hard about. His tie was loosened, his sleeves were rolled up, revealing more tattoos on his forearms, and his knuckles were bruised, scraped raw and bleeding in places. Our eyes met, and I saw exhaustion in his face, but also satisfaction. The kind of look a person gets when they've finished something difficult but necessary. He walked over slowly and knelt beside my chair, bringing himself down to my level again. He moved stiffly, like he'd been in a fight. Maybe he had been. Sophia, he said quietly. We found them. Those 3 words hung in the air between us. I stared at his bruised knuckles, at the set of his jaw, at the hardness still lingering in his eyes. And I understood, or at least I understood as much as a 7-year-old could understand. The men who hurt my mama weren't going to hurt anyone else ever again. Are they? I couldn't finish the question. Didn't even know what question I was trying to ask. They're exactly where they need to be, he said carefully. And they're never coming near you or your mother again. I promise you that. Part of me wanted to ask more, wanted to know what he'd done, where he'd found them, what exactly where they need to be meant. But a bigger part of me, the part that had watched Mama lying unconscious, that had seen the blood on our walls, that had heard her screaming, that part didn't want to know. My child's mind was already too full of scary things. I didn't need any more. So instead, I just nodded. Okay, I whispered. The Mafia boss reached out and gently touched the top of my head, his bruised hand surprisingly gentle. You're a brave girl, Sophia. Your mother would be proud of you. When will she wake up? The doctors say maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. Her body needs time to heal. He paused. But she will wake up. I promise you that too. How do you know? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first time I'd seen anything close to a smile on his face. Because your mother is strong. Anyone who raised a daughter brave enough to run into a room full of criminals and ask for help, that's not someone who gives up easily. I looked back at Mama, at her bandaged face and her still form. I got the paint on her sheets, I said suddenly, noticing the pink smears on the white hospital linens. From my face, she's gonna be mad. The Mafia boss's smile grew a little wider. Something tells me she won't mind. He stood up slowly, wincing slightly, and moved toward the door. Where are you going? I asked, panic rising again. He turned back. Just to clean up. I'll be right outside if you need me. And Sophia? His voice softened. I meant what I said earlier. I'm not leaving. You and your mother are under my protection now. Always. As he left the room, I turned back to Mama and squeezed her hand a little tighter. Somewhere in the city, 3 men were learning what it meant to hurt someone the Mafia boss had decided to protect. And somehow, knowing that made it a little easier to close my eyes and rest. I woke up to voices outside Mama's hospital room. The clock on the wall said 3:47 a.m. Everything was dark except for the soft glow from Mama's monitors and the light spilling under the door from the hallway. I was still in the chair beside her bed, the blanket wrapped around my shoulders, my hand holding hers. She still hadn't woken up. The voices were low and angry, and I recognized one of them immediately, the Mafia boss. I'd only known him for a few hours, but already his voice was becoming familiar, deep and commanding, even when he was trying to be quiet. I rubbed my eyes and looked at Mama. Her chest rose and fell steadily. The machines beeped their regular rhythm. The nurse had said that was good. That regular was what we wanted. The voices got a little louder, and I caught words through the door. Can't be a coincidence. Knew exactly where to find her. Someone talked. Carefully. I slipped out of my chair, keeping the blanket around me like a cape. My legs were stiff from sitting so long, and my feet were cold on the hospital floor. I tiptoed to the door and pressed my ear against it. I knew I probably shouldn't be listening. Mama always said eavesdropping was rude. But these men were talking about her, about what happened, and I needed to know. Run it back for me again, the Mafia boss said, his voice tight with controlled anger. How did the Iron Vipers know about Miriam Torres? According to the one who talked, that was a different voice, rougher. They got a tip 3 days ago. Someone called them, said there was a woman in Riverside who'd refused to pay protection money. Said she was vulnerable, working 2 jobs, no husband, just a kid. My stomach twisted. Someone had told those bad men about us? On purpose? A phone call, the Mafia boss repeated slowly, dangerously. From who? He didn't know the name, said it was passed down through their chain. But boss, the rough voice paused. The person who made that call knew details, knew Miriam's work schedule, knew what days she'd be home alone with the kid, knew she'd already turned down their protection offer twice. Silence, heavy and thick. Then another voice spoke up, younger sounding, nervous. Boss, the only people who knew that much detail about civilians in that territory are us. The Mafia boss's voice cut through like a knife. Someone in our organization gave them that information. The word hit me like a punch. Betrayal. I'd heard that word before, in movies and TV shows Mama let me watch sometimes. It meant when someone who was supposed to be on your side turned against you, when someone you trusted hurt you. But I'd never really understood it until now. Someone who worked with the Mafia boss, someone who was supposed to be loyal to him, had told the Iron Vipers about my mama, had sent those men to our apartment knowing what they would do. Why would someone do that? We need names, the Mafia boss said, and I'd never heard his voice sound like that before. So cold it made me shiver even though I was wrapped in a blanket. I want to know everyone who had access to that civilian registry. Everyone who knew about the protection money situation in Riverside. Everyone who could have made that call. Already on it, boss. We've narrowed it down to maybe 7, 8 people. 7 or 8. The Mafia boss laughed. But it wasn't a happy sound. It was bitter and sharp. Someone in my inner circle sold out an innocent woman and her child to our enemies, and we have 7 or 8 suspects. We'll find them, the rough voice promised. We'll find who did this. You're damn right we will. I heard footsteps, like someone was pacing. The Mafia boss, probably. He did that a lot when he was thinking or angry. Here's what I don't understand, he continued. What did they gain? The Iron Vipers paid them, obviously. But how much could it have been worth? Enough to betray your own organization? Enough to send a woman to the hospital and terrify a 7-year-old child? Nobody answered. Maybe there wasn't a good answer. It wasn't about the money, a new voice said, older, wiser sounding. It was about destabilizing you, Vincent. Think about it. The Iron Vipers hit a civilian in your territory, someone under your protection umbrella. It makes you look weak, makes people think you can't keep them safe. Vincent. So that was the Mafia boss's name. I'd never heard anyone use it before. Then they miscalculated, Vincent said quietly. Because now I'm going to make an example that will echo through every territory in 3 states. The way he said it made my skin prickle. I didn't know exactly what make an example meant, but I knew it wasn't good. Not for whoever the traitor was, anyway. What about the kid? The rough voice asked. The little girl. She gonna be okay? I pressed my ear harder against the door. Sophia, Vincent said, and something in his voice softened just slightly when he said my name. She's stronger than she should have to be. She'll survive this. But someone made sure her mother got beaten half to death, and that someone is going to answer for it. You getting attached, boss? Someone asked, and there was a hint of surprise in the question. Silence again. Then, that little girl ran into a room full of dangerous men and begged for help because she had nowhere else to turn. Her mother is lying in a hospital bed because someone in my organization sold her out. Yes, I'm attached, and anyone who has a problem with that can say so now. Nobody said anything. That's what I thought. Now get back to work. I want that traitor's name by morning. Footsteps started moving, and I quickly scrambled back to my chair, pulling the blanket tight around me and closing my eyes like I'd been asleep the whole time. The door opened quietly. I felt Vincent walk into the room, his footsteps almost silent despite his size. He stood there for a moment. I could feel him watching me, watching Mama. Then he pulled up the other chair and sat down with a heavy sigh. I opened my eyes just a little, peeking through my lashes. He was staring at Mama with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Sadness, maybe. Or guilt. His elbows rested on his knees, his bruised hands clasped together. "Someone betrayed you," I whispered. His head snapped toward me, surprised I was awake. Or maybe surprised that I'd heard. For a moment, he looked like he might lie, might tell me I was imagining things, or that I shouldn't worry about grown-up problems. But then his expression softened, and he just nodded. "Yes," he said simply. "Someone I trusted put your mother in danger." I tried to wrap my 7-year-old brain around that. But why? Why? Why would they do that if they're supposed to be on your team? That's what I'm going to find out. And then what? His jaw tightened. Then I'm going to make sure they never betray anyone ever again. I thought about that for a minute, hugging my blanket tighter. "Are you going to find them? The person who told on us?" "Yes." "Promise?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Sophia, I promise you, I will find whoever did this. And I promise you something else, too." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "This won't happen to you or your mother ever again. Not from the Iron Vipers, not from my own people, not from anyone. You have my word." "How can you promise that?" I asked. "Bad things happen all the time. Mama always says we can't control everything." "Your mother is right. We can't control everything." His expression hardened. "But we can control who we let close to us. And I'm going to make very sure that the only people who get anywhere near you and your mother are people I trust completely, starting with me." I didn't fully understand what he meant. How could one person protect us from everything? Even the Mafia boss couldn't be everywhere at once. But looking at his face, at the determination in his eyes, at the set of his jaw, at the way his bruised hands clenched like he was ready to fight the whole world, I believed he would try. "Okay," I whispered. He reached over and gently tucked the blanket more securely around my shoulders. "Try to sleep, Sophia. Tomorrow might be a better day." I nodded and closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easy. Because now I knew. The men who hurt Mama weren't just random bad guys. Someone close to Vincent had sent them, and that somehow made everything feel even more dangerous. The next evening, Vincent told me we couldn't stay at the hospital anymore. "It's not safe," he said gently, kneeling beside my chair. "Too many people coming and going. Too many eyes. I need to take you somewhere protected while I handle some business." "But what about Mama?" Panic rose in my chest. "I can't leave her." "Your mother will have round-the-clock security. 3 of my best men will be stationed outside this room at all times. No one gets in without my approval." He touched my shoulder carefully. "But you, Sophia, you need rest. Real rest. In a real bed. With actual food. Not hospital vending machine snacks." I looked at Mama, still unconscious in her bed. The doctors said she might wake up soon, maybe in the next day or two. What if she woke up and I wasn't here? What if she asks for me? My voice cracked. "Then my men will call me immediately, and I'll bring you straight back. I promise." Vincent's dark eyes held mine. "But right now, the best thing you can do for your mother is take care of yourself. She wouldn't want you sitting in this hospital chair for days, would she?" He was right. Mama always said I had to eat properly and sleep properly, even when she was working double shifts and barely sleeping herself. "Okay," I whispered. The safe house wasn't what I expected. I thought it would be dark and scary, like something from a movie. But when Vincent's car pulled up to a tall building in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, it looked almost normal. Fancy, but normal. We took an elevator to the top floor, the penthouse, Vincent called it, and when the doors opened, my mouth fell open. The apartment was huge, bigger than 3 of my apartments put together. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights twinkling like stars. White couches sat in a living room with a TV bigger than my bed. The kitchen had shiny counters and appliances that looked like they'd never been used. "Sophia, this is Mrs. Chen," Vincent said, gesturing to an older Asian woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a bun. "She's going to look after you while I'm gone. Anything you need, food, clothes, anything at all, you tell her." Mrs. Chen smiled at me. "Hello, sweetheart. Are you hungry?" I realized I was starving. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. "And these are Marco and Luis," Vincent continued, pointing to 2 large men standing near the door. Both wore suits and had serious expressions. "They're here to keep you safe. They'll be right outside if you need anything." The guards nodded at me. I tried to smile back, but my face felt frozen. Vincent knelt down one more time. "I have to go take care of some things, important things that can't wait." "What kind of things?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. His expression darkened. "The kind of things that make sure you and your mother never have to be afraid again." My stomach twisted. I knew what that meant, sort of. He was going after the Iron Vipers, after the traitor, after everyone who'd hurt us. "How long will you be gone?" "A few hours, maybe more." He paused. "But I will come back, Sophia. I promise you that." "What if you don't?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "What if something happens and you don't come back and I'm here alone and Mama's still in the hospital and—" "Hey!" His hands gripped my shoulders firmly. "Look at me. Nothing is going to happen. I've been doing this for a very long time. I know how to handle myself." "But—" "No buts. I made you a promise, remember? I said I wouldn't leave you. And I keep my promises." His voice softened. "Always." I wanted to believe him. I did believe him. But I was also 7 years old and terrified, and my mama was unconscious in a hospital, and this tattooed stranger was the only person standing between me and the whole scary world. What if he left and never came back? "Trust me," Vincent said quietly, like he could read my thoughts. So I nodded, even though my chest felt tight with worry. He stood and spoke quietly to Mrs. Chen, giving her instructions I couldn't quite hear. Then he walked to the door where his men were waiting. I watched him go, my small hands clutched together. At the doorway, he turned back one more time. Our eyes met across the huge living room. "A few hours, Sophia. I'll be back before you know it." Then he was gone. Mrs. Chen made me dinner, real dinner, not hospital food, chicken and rice and vegetables that actually tasted good. She ran me a bath in a bathroom that had a tub big enough to swim in. She found me pajamas that were way too big but soft and clean. She tried to get me to watch TV, but I couldn't focus. All I could think about was where Vincent was and what he was doing. I sat on the big white couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the door. Mrs. Chen sat in a nearby chair, knitting something. "He'll be back," she said gently, not looking up from her needles. "Mr. Torino always keeps his word." "How do you know?" "I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him break a promise, not once." That made me feel a little better, but only a little. Time crawled by. Around 9 o'clock, I heard shouting from somewhere outside. Male voices, harsh and angry. I jumped, clutching my blanket tighter. Mrs. Chen stood up quickly. "It's all right, dear. They're just—" More shouting. Then the sound of car engines starting up, multiple engines, roaring to life like growling animals. I ran to the window and pressed my face against the glass. Far below, I could see black cars pulling out of the garage, speeding away into the night. Maybe 5 or 6 of them, all moving fast. "Where are they going?" I whispered. Mrs. Chen appeared beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "To finish what needs to be finished." That didn't make me feel better at all. I went back to the couch and curled up in a ball, the blanket pulled over my head. I heard Mrs. Chen moving around, heard her talking quietly on the phone, heard Marco and Luis outside the door speaking in low voices. At some point, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Click, 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 click. I knew that sound from movies. Guns being loaded. My whole body started shaking. Vincent had said he'd be back. He'd promised. But what if something went wrong? What if the Iron Vipers were ready for him? What if the traitor warned them? What if, what if, what if? The questions spun in my head until I felt dizzy. Mrs. Chen tried to get me to lie down in the bedroom, but I refused. I wanted to be right here by the door, so I'd know the second Vincent came back. If he came back. Hours passed. 10 o'clock. 11. Midnight. Mrs. Chen dozed in her chair. The guards outside talked quietly, and I sat there, watching the door, my heart pounding every time I heard footsteps in the hallway. But none of them were Vincent. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because the next thing I knew, I heard the sound of a key in the lock. My eyes flew open. The clock on the wall said 2:34 a.m. The door opened. Vincent walked in. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I started crying. I scrambled off the couch and ran to him, my two big pajamas flapping around my legs. He caught me as I crashed into him, lifting me up like I weighed nothing. I wrapped my arms around his neck and buried my face in his shoulders, sobbing. "You came back," I choked out. "You came back. I told you I would." His voice was tired but steady. "I always keep my promises." He carried me back to the couch and sat down, keeping me in his lap. I didn't let go of him. Couldn't let go. Up close, I could see he looked exhausted. There was a cut above his eyebrow that hadn't been there before. His shirt was dirty again. But his eyes, those dark, intense eyes, looked somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. "Is it over?" I whispered. "The bad stuff?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Then he said, "The Iron Vipers are gone, Sophia. They'll never touch you again. Never touch your mother again. I made sure of that." "What does gone mean?" "It means they're not a threat anymore. Not to you, not to anyone in this city." His hand rested on my back, gentle and protective. "It means you're safe now." I didn't know exactly what he'd done, didn't know where he'd been or what had happened in those hours he was gone. But looking at his face, at the finality in his expression, I understood enough. The monsters who'd hurt my mama weren't monsters anymore. They were just gone. "Thank you," I whispered. Vincent's arms tightened around me slightly. "You don't have to thank me. This is what family does. We protect each other." "But we're not family." He looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. "Maybe not by blood," he said finally. "But family isn't always about blood, Sophia. Sometimes it's about choice. And I choose you and your mother, if you'll have me." I didn't fully understand what he was offering. I was too young, too tired, too overwhelmed. But I nodded anyway, because somewhere in the last day and a half, this scary tattooed man had become the safest person in my world. The call came at 6:47 in the morning. I was still half asleep on the safe house couch, wrapped in blankets, when Vincent's phone rang. He'd stayed the whole night, sitting in the chair across from me like he was standing guard, even though Marco and Luis were right outside. He answered on the first ring. "Talk to me." I sat up, suddenly wide awake, my heart pounding. Something about the way his whole body tensed told me this was important. "When?" he asked, his voice sharp. Then, after a pause, "We're on our way." He ended the call and looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something that might have been a smile trying to break through his serious expression. "Your mother's awake." I didn't remember moving. One second I was on the couch, the next I was standing, my hands clutching Vincent's arm. "She's awake? Really? Is she okay? Can we go see her? Right now?" Get your shoes on, he said, and this time he definitely smiled. Let's go see your mama. The car ride felt longer than it actually was. Every red light was torture. Every turn felt like it took forever. I sat in the back seat, bouncing my leg up and down, unable to sit still. Vincent kept glancing at me. She's going to be okay, Sophia. The doctors said she's stable and alert. But what if she's scared? What if she doesn't know where I am? What if she knows you're safe? My men told her the moment she woke up. That helped a little, but I wouldn't feel better until I saw her with my own eyes. We pulled up to the private clinic, and I was out of the car before it even fully stopped. Vincent caught up to me in 2 long strides, his hand on my shoulder guiding me through the doors. The elevator ride to her floor was the longest 30 seconds of my life. Then we were in the hallway, and I could see her room at the end. The door was open. Light spilled out into the corridor. I ran. Sophia, careful, Vincent called after me, but I was already at the door. And there she was. Mama. Awake. Sitting up slightly in the hospital bed, her eyes open. Looking toward the door like she'd been waiting for me. Mama! The word came out as a sob. Her face crumpled when she saw me. Baby? Her voice was weak and scratchy, not her normal voice at all. But it was her. It was really her. I flew to the bedside and grabbed her hand, the one without all the tubes and wires. She squeezed back, and even though her grip was weak, it was there. She was squeezing my hand. Mama, you're awake. You're really awake. Tears poured down my face so fast I could barely see. I was so scared. I thought you weren't going to wake up. I thought, shh, baby, I'm here. Her other hand came up shakily to touch my face, wiping at my tears even though she was crying too. I'm here. I'm okay. I wanted to climb into the bed with her, to hold her and never let go, but I was afraid I'd hurt her. She was still covered in bandages, still hooked up to machines, still looking so fragile. What happened? She whispered, her eyes searching mine with confusion and fear. Where are we? How did I? She looked around the room, taking in the expensive equipment, the private space, the flowers someone had already brought. This isn't a regular hospital. It's a private clinic, I said quickly. Mama, so much happened. I ran and I found help and… That's when she noticed Vincent. He'd stayed back near the door, giving us space, but now Mama's eyes locked onto him. I saw her take in the tattoos, the expensive clothes, the commanding presence that filled the room even when he was trying to be unobtrusive. Her hand tightened on mine. Sophia, who is that? I looked back at Vincent, then at Mama. That's Vincent. He saved us, Mama. He saved you. Mama's expression was hard to read, fear mixed with confusion mixed with something else I couldn't name. Saved me how? Baby, what happened after I… She closed her eyes briefly, and I saw pain flash across her face, not physical pain, but the pain of remembering. The men, those men came and they… I ran, I said quickly. Just like you told me to. I hid, and then I ran, and I found Vincent at this big fancy hotel, and I asked him to help, and he did. He brought his men and his doctor, and he found you and brought you here and… The words tumbled out faster and faster. And he went after the men who hurt you, and he made sure they can never hurt us again. Mama stared at Vincent with wide eyes. I could see her trying to piece it all together, trying to understand why a man like him would help people like us. Vincent must have seen her fear because he took a slow step forward, his hands visible at his sides, non-threatening. Mrs. Torres, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. My name is Vincent Torino. Your daughter came to me for help, and I gave it. You're safe now. Both of you are safe. Vincent Torino, Mama repeated slowly, and I saw recognition dawn in her eyes. She might not know much about the underworld, but everyone in the city had heard that name. The Yes, he said simply, not making her say it out loud. Mama's grip on my hand tightened. Why would you help us? We're nobody. We don't have money to pay you. We don't have anything. You have a daughter brave enough to walk into a room full of criminals and ask for help, Vincent interrupted quietly. That's not nothing, Mrs. Torres. That's everything. Mama looked at me, her eyes filling with fresh tears. You went to him? Baby, that was so dangerous. What if— But it wasn't, I said. He helped, Mama. He really helped. Mama studied Vincent's face for a long moment. I could see her trying to reconcile the fearsome reputation with the man standing calmly in her hospital room, the man who'd apparently saved both our lives. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you. I don't even know how to thank you properly. You saved my daughter. You saved me. Vincent shook his head slightly. Your daughter saved you. I just provided the resources. He moved closer to the bed, pulling up a chair, and sat down. Even sitting, he was imposing, but something about his posture was relaxed, careful, like he was trying not to scare her. Mrs. Torres, I need you to understand something, he said seriously. The men who hurt you, they're not a problem anymore. They'll never come back. But more than that, I'm putting you and Sophia under my protection, permanently. Protection? Mama's voice wavered. I don't understand. Why would you do that? What do you want from us? Nothing, Vincent said simply. I want nothing from you except your safety. Consider it a debt I owe the universe. Mama looked confused, but also too exhausted to argue. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it, Vincent replied. Say you'll let me move you out of that apartment into somewhere safer. Say you'll let my men keep watch until we're absolutely certain there are no other threats. Say you'll let me help. I saw Mama wrestling with it, her pride fighting against her practical nature, against the reality that she couldn't protect us alone anymore, against the fact that she was lying in a hospital bed because she'd been vulnerable. Finally, she nodded. Okay, yes. Thank you. No need to thank me, Vincent said. And then he did something that surprised both of us. He reached out and gently patted Mama's hand. Just once, almost awkwardly. Like he wasn't used to comforting gestures but was trying anyway. Rest now, he said. Heal. Everything else will be taken care of. Then he stood and moved toward the door, giving us space again. I watched him go, this powerful, dangerous man who'd torn apart an entire criminal organization for us, who'd stayed up all night making sure I was safe, who'd just promised to protect us forever. And I realized something in that moment, something that settled deep in my chest and felt like truth. He wasn't just the Mafia boss anymore. He wasn't just Vincent Torino, the feared criminal who ran 3 states. He was the man who'd knelt down to my level when I was terrified. The man who'd held my hand in the car. The man who'd carried my mother to safety. The man who'd promised not to leave, and hadn't. He was the man who saved us. And somehow, in just 2 days, he'd become family. I looked at Mama, who was watching Vincent's retreating figure with an expression of wonder and confusion and reluctant trust. He's good, Mama, I whispered. I know he's scary, but he's good. To us, anyway. Mama pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead, despite the pain it must have caused her to move. I believe you, baby, she whispered back. I believe you. And outside in the hallway, I heard Vincent speaking quietly to his men, making arrangements, ensuring protection, building walls around us that no one would ever break through again. Our lives had changed forever that night I ran into that golden ballroom. And somehow, impossibly, they'd changed for the better. 6 weeks later, everything was different. We didn't live in the Riverside apartments anymore. Vincent had moved us to a place in a neighborhood where the streetlights actually worked, and there weren't broken bottles on the sidewalk. Our new apartment was on the fourth floor of a building with an actual doorman. A nice man named George who always smiled at me and sometimes had candy in his pocket. The apartment had 2 bedrooms instead of one. Mama didn't have to sleep on the couch anymore. I had my own room with a real bed and a window that looked out over a small park where kids played during the day. The building was quiet, safe. The kind of place where Mama could breathe without constantly looking over her shoulder. She'd gone back to work 3 weeks ago, same job at the clinic, but Vincent had arranged for her schedule to be less brutal. No more double shifts unless she wanted them. No more working until midnight and then getting up at 6. She looked less tired now, less scared. But the biggest change wasn't the apartment or Mama's job. It was Vincent. He visited twice a week, like clockwork. Usually Tuesday evenings and Saturday afternoons. At first, Mama had been nervous about it, unsure what to say to this powerful man who'd turned our lives upside down. But Vincent never made it awkward. He'd show up with takeout from nice restaurants, ask how Mama was healing, make sure we had everything we needed. And he always brought something for me. The first time, it was a sketchbook, a real one, not from the dollar store, with thick pages that didn't bleed when I used markers. "I heard you like art," he'd said simply, handing it to me. I'd stared at it like he'd given me a bar of gold. "How did you know?" "Mrs. Chen mentioned you had pink paint all over your face that night. I figured it wasn't just random." The second visit, he brought colored pencils, the fancy kind that came in a wooden box. The third visit, a red dress, not torn and dirty like the one I'd worn that terrible night, but new and beautiful, with little flowers embroidered on the collar. "You don't have to keep bringing me stuff," I'd said, even though I loved every gift. "I know," he'd replied. "I want to." He taught me things too, in his own way. Not school things, Mama handled that, but other things, important things. He taught me that it was okay to be scared, but I didn't have to let fear control me. He taught me that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was strength. He taught me that the world had dangerous people in it, but it also had good people. People who would stand between you and the darkness if you let them. And slowly, week by week, visit by visit, I stopped feeling like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I started to feel safe again. I still saw the way other people looked at Vincent when we were out in public, the way they stepped aside on the sidewalk, the way store owners straightened up when he walked in, the way conversations died when he entered a room. They saw the tattoos crawling up his neck and across his hands. They saw the expensive suits and the dangerous reputation. They saw the Mafia boss who ran 3 states with an iron fist. But I saw something different now. I saw the man who sat on our living room floor and helped me draw pictures, even though his huge hands made the colored pencils look tiny. I saw the man who listened patiently when I told him about my day at school, about the girl who'd been mean to me, about the math test I was worried about. I saw the man who asked Mama about her health every visit, who noticed when she was tired, who'd quietly arranged for a physical therapist to help with her lingering injuries. I saw the man who'd knelt down to my level when I was terrified and promised to help. He was still Vincent Torino, still tattooed, still feared, still powerful enough to make grown men nervous with just a look. But to me, he was something else entirely. He was family. Tonight was Saturday, and Vincent had arrived at 6 o'clock with bags of Italian food from a restaurant Mama said we could never have afforded before. "You spoil us," Mama said as Vincent set everything out on our little dining table, the same table that had come with the apartment, nothing fancy, but ours. "That's the point," Vincent replied with that almost smile he got sometimes. We sat down together, Mama at one end, Vincent at the other, me in between. It felt natural now, this arrangement. like we'd been doing it forever instead of just 6 weeks. Mama said grace, which she always did, and I noticed Vincent bow his head respectfully, even though I don't think he was particularly religious. But he never made Mama feel weird about it, never made her feel like she had to change for him. We ate and talked. Mama told a funny story about one of her patients at the clinic. Vincent told us about a business meeting that had gone wrong, carefully editing out any scary details, but making it funny enough that Mama actually laughed. A real laugh, not the tired, worried laugh she used to have. I mostly listened, eating my pasta and watching them. Watching how Mama had relaxed around Vincent. Watching how Vincent's whole expression softened when he looked at us, like we were something precious he had to protect. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Mama made tea while Vincent and I sat on the couch. He asked to see my latest drawings, and I showed him the sketch I'd been working on, a picture of the three of us sitting at the dinner table. "That's really good, Sophia," he said, studying it carefully. "You got your mama's smile perfect. I'm still working on your tattoos. They're hard to draw. Take your time. You'll get it." Mama came back with 3 cups of tea and settled into the armchair, her feet tucked under her. She looked peaceful, happy, more like herself than she'd been in years, maybe. We sat there for a while, just existing together. The TV played quietly in the background, but nobody was really watching it. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime sounds, but up here in our fourth-floor apartment with the working locks and the doorman downstairs, it all felt distant, safe. I looked at Vincent, this man who'd entered our lives like a storm and somehow made everything better. This man who asked for nothing but gave us everything. This man who showed up week after week like he had nowhere else he'd rather be. Without thinking about it, I put down my teacup and climbed off the couch. I walked over to where Vincent sat and stopped in front of him. He looked at me curiously. "What's up, kiddo?" Instead of answering, I climbed into his lap, just like I had that first night, when I'd been terrified and desperate, and he'd been a stranger who could have turned me away but didn't. His arms came around me automatically, holding me steady. Safe. I leaned against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart through his expensive shirt, breathing in that familiar cologne that meant protection and safety now instead of fear. "Thank you," I whispered, so quietly that maybe only he could hear. "Thank you for saving my mom." Vincent was still for a moment. Then his arms tightened around me slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion I'd never heard from him before. "You saved me first, Sophia." I pulled back to look at his face, confused. "What? No, I didn't. You saved us." But Vincent shook his head, and I saw something in his eyes, something deep and honest and a little bit sad. "Yes, you did," he said softly. "You just don't know it yet." I didn't understand what he meant. How could I have saved him? I was just a kid. He was the powerful one, the one who fixed everything, the one who made bad people disappear and kept us safe. But looking at his face, at the way his expression had softened, at the way he held me like I was something infinitely valuable, I could see he meant every word. Across the room, Mama was crying, but they were good tears, happy tears. She pressed her hand to her mouth, smiling behind it. "You too," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're going to make me ruin my makeup." "You're not wearing makeup, Mama," I pointed out. "Well then, you're going to make me cry without any makeup to ruin," she laughed. Vincent laughed too, a real laugh, full and genuine. I'd never heard him laugh like that before. And sitting there in his lap, surrounded by my mother's laughter and the warmth of our little apartment and the knowledge that we were safe and protected and loved, I realized something important. Family wasn't just the people you were born with. Sometimes family was the people who chose you, who showed up, who kept their promises, who held you when you cried and taught you how to be brave and sat at your dinner table week after week, like there was nowhere else they'd rather be. Vincent hadn't just saved our lives that night. He'd given us something we'd never really had before. He'd given us a family. I love you, I whispered, the words surprising even me. Vincent's arms tightened around me one more time, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but full of a promise I knew he'd never break. I love you too, kiddo. Both of you. Always. Outside, the city kept moving. The world kept turning. Somewhere out there, Vincent Torino was still the feared Mafia boss who ran 3 states with ruthless efficiency. But here, in our little apartment on the 4th floor, he was just Vincent. The man who saved us. The man we saved right back. Family. If this video grabbed your attention, then you're not ready for what's coming next. So hit that like button, smash it like it owes you money, and subscribe so you never miss another mind-blowing, jaw-dropping, captivating story. Trust me, the next video, you'll want to be here first. So turn on all notifications, join the family, and I'll see you in the next one.